As you know, the Parsha of the week is Parsha's Beshalach. And this Parsha describes the actual leaving when Yidden left Mitzrayim. And thus, it is very, very significant for us. The better we understand what took place as Yidden were leaving Mitzrayim, where in fact what was taking place there was that they were changing the entire situation, and they had what? They were thanks for your concern. Yeah, I got it. They were changing the entire situation and getting ready to receive the Torah, which means that they had to go through a fundamental change. Which is very instructive for us to understand our own path. So, we have to remember that when Eden left Mitzrayim, they had every good reason to leave Mitzrayim. Number one, they suffered grossly in Mitzrayim. The Mitzrayim had abused them to the extreme. And number two, they came out of Mitzrayim with open miracles. Hashem showed them how He is smiting the Mitzrayim, and He is safeguarding the Eden. He showed them clearly a demarcation line, how they are different than the Egyptians. They're different than the others. That which can befall others under natural circumstances does not apply to them. Open miracles. And these are the circumstances under which they left Mitzrayim. When they left Mitzrayim, Paroi was forced to let them go. It wasn't something that Paroi acquiesced, so to speak. Agreed, submitted to their request. Oh, please give us some freedom. And Paroi said, okay, I recognize your civil rights. You can go. It was with severe confrontation that Paroi let him go. And the Torah says, Beshalach Paroi is home. Paroi finally sent the Yidden out. What is the first thing that the Torah says? In that very same pasuk, Beshalach Paroi is home. It says, V'lei nocham Elokim derech eretz plishtim ki korev hu. Hashem did not lead them through the path of the land of Plishtim, because this is close. And why did Hashem not lead them through the close path? Because He said, lest the people will renege, will change their mind. And what will they do if they change their mind? They will go back to Mitzrayim. It really boggles the mind, right? You would think they should go back to Mitzrayim after having been there under such circumstances, and after having been taken out so miraculously. And yet, Hashem plotted, and what plotted means, He planned their path in such a way that will make it more difficult for them to think to go back to Mitzrayim. And as Rashi says, right there in the place, in spot, that in fact, at some point in time, they did say, let's go back to Mitzrayim. And it wasn't even immediate. It was a year later. after they sent the Meraglim, after they sent the spies into Eretz Yisrael, where they were ready to enter Eretz Yisrael. And the spies came back and they dissuaded them. They told them, we're scared, we can't go to Eretz Yisrael. So then, all of a sudden, there was a group that said, let us appoint a leader and we're going back to Mitzrayim. Right? And all this is spelled out right here in the Torah.
This is 1 year after.
Yeah. 1 year after. Because they were in Chayre, Matan Torah, they building the Mishkan, and all that took a year. And after that, there was the Ma'aseh Meraglim. What this is telling us, what the Torah is teaching us here, is what is required for a person to change from being an Eved in Mitzrayim, subservient to Mitzrayim, to becoming a Yid completely independent of Mitzrayim, and only recognizing Hashem, only recognizing the Torah. In terms of evidence, in terms of proof, there was no question that the proof was overwhelmingly to the side of following Hashem. Overwhelmingly. With the Nisim and everything. And as a matter of fact, what I mentioned about the Meraglim, this happened after Kriyas Yamsuf, it happened after Matan Torah. So the evidence was all overwhelmingly towards Hashem. So logically, it made no sense for anybody coming back and said, oh, let's go back to Mitzrayim. What is it that suggested such a thing, that it was possible to go back to Mitzrayim? The explanation for this is, basically, I'll elaborate a little later, but the basis of the explanation is that there are two levels of awareness in the person. There is that which a person is aware because he learned it, he's got proof, he's got arguments to support it. And that which a person is aware of because that is his basic truth. Not because he learned it, not because he has proof for it. This is what he is in essence. That which he is in essence is always there underneath, is always there in the subconscious. And therefore, learning about Hashem and seeing the miracles and having all the proofs and all the evidence cannot outdo, cannot overcome that which, where his essence is, where his base is. His base remains where he is. As a matter of fact, it's an interesting, ultimate truth that the Doir, that generation that left Egypt, that left Mitzrayim, that were in Mitzrayim, never made it to Eretz Yisrael. Their children made it to Eretz Yisrael. They never made it to Eretz Yisrael. Because they couldn't break at that level.
So was it the children that wanted to go back to Egypt, or the actual people that left it?
No, the people who left it. This was just a year. What? This was just a year after they left Egypt.
You said it was just before they went into Israel.
Before they went. What?
You said it was just before they went in, right? So there was some left then?
No, wait a second. Ultimately, they were all held back another 39 years. But at that point, Hashem was ready to bring him into Israel. And because of the Chet Meraglim, they were held over. and all the others, and that's why only they're the second generation.
Only because the Chet they didn't get into Israel.
What? Because of the Chet Meraglim, ultimately because of that, right? They were not fit. I want to elaborate on this, and this will give us a good insight into what we are set out here to accomplish, what we need to accomplish, and how ultimately we accomplish it. I think I once related to you a little episode in the life of the Rebbe Maharash. If I remember correctly, I told you the story with the ladder. I did? Okay. Some heard it, some didn't, or you heard it. But I want to bring it in so we understand what's going on. The story is the Rebbe Maharash. For those who don't know, the Rebbe Maharash was the previous Rebbe's grandfather. That's the Rebbe whose Yotzet we're going to hold up tonight, his grandfather. So he was a very positive, a very upbeat person, very freilich person throughout his lifetime, no matter what difficulties. This was his innate nature. As a child, he was a very lebedik, a very upbeat person, child. And the Rebbe Maharash was once in the courtyard playing with other children, and the children were challenging each other to climb up on the ladder that was standing there. It was a tall ladder. And they were challenging each other who can climb further up. And the children were climbing one after the other. One climbed a certain distance, one climbed a little further, a little less. None of them were able to go all the way to the top. It was very tall ladder. And they would get scared, they would come down. Then came the Rebbe Maharash's turn, and he climbed all the way up to the top. He was the only one who made it to the top. And then he came down. The Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, was the Rebbe at the time. His father was observing this whole play. So later on, he asked the Rebbe, the Maharash, the child, how come the other children couldn't do it and you did it? So the Rebbe answered, the child answered, because the other children were looking back into the ground. When they climbed up a certain distance, they would look back. So when they looked back, they got scared of the height, or the distance from where they were, and they had to come down. I didn't look back. I only look upwards. Because I looked upwards, so I was able to go all the way up. Okay, that's the story. So now, we have to ask ourselves the question, this trick, this piece of wisdom, that you shouldn't look back, you should look upwards, every kid knows it. Every kid knows. If you want to go up, don't look back, you get scared. So how come the other kids did look back, and only the Rebbe didn't look back? The answer is, this is innate, this is in the very character of a Rebbe. The other children looked back because they were compelled to look back. They had to look back. Why? Because the ladder is standing on the ground. And in their mind, the ground is the base. The ground is what's holding them up. This is the secure spot. As they're climbing up on the ladder, they're further away from the base. They're further away from the secure spot. And therefore they have to look back whether the secure spot is still with them, is still holding them up, and they can still relate to it. As they're climbing up, further and further, they can't surmise the distance anymore. So they kind of lose connection to their base. And that's why they're compelled to go back. The Rebbe didn't look back. Why? Because the Rebbe didn't consider the ground his base. Wherever he is, his base is Hashem. Wherever he is, that's where he is. Hashem is holding him up where he is. So as he's climbing, he doesn't have to look back. He is perfectly comfortable where he is. And therefore he was able to climb up all the way to the top without him having to look back. As one comes out of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, of Mitzrayim, of bondage, and he sees, yes, here I was a slave, I was in Mitzrayim, and Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim miraculously. So how does he relate to this whole episode? He relates to this episode is that basically I'm in Mitzrayim, but Hashem is taking me out of Mitzrayim. That means that this thing that I'm out of Mitzrayim is not a basic reality. This is something which is a process. Hashem is taking me out of it. So the minute I come to a situation where I begin to tremble, I begin to doubt, I'm in a difficult moment. So then I'm losing my base. Because the base he still considers to be where I started from. And that's why the tendency is, okay, let's go back to the base. And this is what Hashem said. Hashem said, if I lead them, first of all, I just want to interject a very important point. Hashem could really prevent any kind of obstacle in their path. There should be no wars, no difficulties. He can prevent every obstacle. As a matter of fact, the Kriyas Yamsuf, the fact that Eden faced the Yamsuf, was a gimmick that Hashem himself has plotted out.
What?
A gimmick. It was not a necessity. It wasn't necessary. Hashem told them to walk in that direction so that the Egyptians will then chase them towards the Yamsuf. They didn't have to go through the Yamsuf. The fact is, they didn't cross the Yamsuf. They went in kind of a semicircle. They went in and went out on the same side. They didn't have to cross. They didn't cross the Yamsuf. They didn't have to go across. Yamsuf wasn't in their way, in the sense towards where they have to go. So Hashem could have prevented anything happening. Melchemes Amalek, like Rashi says, or Melchemes Aknani, anything. And yet Hashem didn't do it. And Hashem said they're going to face every difficulty that comes in a person's path as he is going out of Mitzrayim and going to Eretz Yisrael and going to receive the Torah. And they have to go through these difficulties. They have to go through these challenges. And therefore Hashem said, I have to make sure that as they're going through these difficulties, they will not be so close and so directly aware of Mitzrayim, so that they will not decide to turn back. The question is, if Hashem is afraid that they will turn back to Mitzrayim because they will be confronted with difficulties, just as Hashem had destroyed every difficulty and made them go out of Mitzrayim, in Yod Romov, in open parade, Pari himself asked him to go, he could have prevented him, he made smooth their way. They should go straight to Eretz Yisrael. But if Hashem had done that, He would smoothen their way, they would not have faced anything, they would not have gone through any kind of challenges on their way. Then in their mind would remain that their base is still Mitzrayim, but they're being led in this direction. But their essential base is still there. In order that they should completely change their basic orientation, that their base, as we explained by the Rebbe Maharaj, their base is not the ground upon which the ladder stands. But the base is Hashem, this is the principle of Yiddishkeit. They had to go through all these difficulties, and they had to to overcome all these challenges, overcome all their doubts, fight it out with themselves. When a person breaks through every time that he's got a challenge, he takes up the challenge, and he finds it in his mind, and finds it in his heart, and finds it in his morale strength to go through it. Then he is really able to break away from where he was and get into a new mode.
What's the comfort that they had inside? Like
The what?
The comfort.
They didn't have any comfort, but this is where they belonged.
Why they feel more good than being in Mitzrayim than having a test? If anyway they weren't resting in peace, they were suffering the worst.
That's right. So as long as everything goes smoothly, so they feel better here than there. But once they're confronted with the difficulty, they don't have a basis with which to confront it. They can't fight it. So they fall back. I'll elaborate a little more as we go on.
I thought you don't take them by the desert because you don't want them to see a war again and to go break. Now I understand from you want to do another miracle, to open the ocean, to open the sea. Too. That's the reason that they go to the...
No, that was... there were two separate things. First, he didn't lead them in a straight path.
Yeah.
And then, in the way as he took them, they went through various circumstances. As we discussed in the past, there are two very different levels in a person's understanding of knowledge. There is what we call a conscious and a logical level. The logical level, like this ladder is standing. So a person goes up and climbs this ladder because it's logical that the ladder can stand. The ladder is a solid structure, and it's standing on the ground, and you can see that he can climb on the ladder. It's pretty safe. And the same thing is as one is leaving Mitzrayim. Leaving Mitzrayim, it's logical he should leave Mitzrayim. Why? Because here he was in Mitzrayim, and here he sees miracles. Hashem is telling him, I'm taking you out. So, from his view, from his perspective, that he is in Mitzrayim and Hashem is taking him out, it makes sense that he should go out and follow Hashem. Because of all the miracles that he was shown. Then there is another level of knowledge. This other level of knowledge, which is the necessity to receive the Torah and to really get into Yiddishkeit, this level of knowledge is not based on any logic. And it's not a structure that stands on the ground. This is a knowledge that a Yid knows what's called dynamically, directly. He knows it without need of proof. He knows it directly. what is needed in coming out of Mitzrayim and breaking away from Mitzrayim and receiving the Torah is not just that on the basis of the way I was in Mitzrayim, this is the logical, this is the better thing. What's needed is that we should come to recognize that the only truth there is Elokus, is godliness, is Torah. Not that relative to what I was, this is what I should choose. This principle that one gets to know and to recognize within himself that this is the only truth there is, and it's not based on any previous experience. This does not happen by any proofs, by any of any arguments that prove that this is better than that. This is something that they have to fight through on their own. When Eden went out of Mitzrayim and they came to the Yam Suf, and at the Yam Suf they were sandwiched over there between the Yam Suf and the Parai. And at that moment, in fact, there were such who were saying, what did you do? Well, let's go back to Mitzrayim. Also at that moment too. Because they were so used to Parai. Parai was their real base. And they said, okay, if Hashem, can't help us, we might as well go to Mitzrayim. So what was needed at that moment? What was needed at that moment is a recognition for them that, no, they came out of Mitzrayim. Even though when they came out of Mitzrayim, they saw the miracles that Hashem took them out. And now they see that they're facing the sea, and they don't know what's going to happen. As far as they are concerned, their break with Mitzrayim is categorical, is total. That's not an option anymore. Whatever will happen over here, I don't know. But my break with Mitzrayim has to be total. And this confrontation, this fighting with themselves, this is what breaks their connection to Mitzrayim. There is, in recent times, in our own time, there was the following experience that we had. At the time when the communism was falling apart. So if you remember, I don't know how many of you remember, many of you will remember, there was first Gorbachev. Gorbachev is the one who started the glasnost and started disintegrating this hold on the people. Perestroika, glasnost. And at that time, many shluchim from Rebbe went away to Russia. I mean, first of all, there were shluchim there before also, but this time they started working openly. Under Gorbachev, they started working openly, not clandestine. And they were, establishing communities, establishing institutions and so forth. Even though it was still shaky, but nevertheless they trusted that it's going to work out. Then, if you remember, Gorbachev himself was captured. He was held captive in the parliament, and the parliament didn't agree with his path, and they threatened that they are going to roll the whole thing back. And it was a very precarious situation. People were very scared what's going to happen now. Gorbachev was completely unreachable. He was taken captive within the Parliament House. and they started establishing a new rules. I'm sorry?
Resort home or something? It wasn't.
That was later. Originally, he was held back over there. Resort home, that's Yeltsin sent him to his resort. That's so people got scared. What's going to happen? What's going to be? So they wrote to the Rebbe. That maybe we should come back. The Imam is scared. So the Rebbe responded, Lepella, I wonder, how did you ever think of that? Whatever made you think of that? How can you possibly think of that? And he instructed you should go and do your work without any fear and continue.
The Shluchim thought maybe to come back to the United States.
Yeah.
What's that? What do you say?
No, he said the Shluchim that came from the people who came from America to Russia then to help them come back.
Why did they leave America and go to Russia?
Excuse me?
Why did they go to Russia?
Okay, so they were asking the Rebbe, should they stay or should they come back? Because they felt they were in danger. It was, previously it was a very dangerous thing to come and infiltrate the community there from America.
So you're speaking about, these were religious people like you guys.
Yeah.
So they had centers, they were Chabad people like,
They were,
Hasidic people.
right.
That's why they were in Russia.
Right.
There's no Jew in their right mind would go back to Russia unless they were protected.
Yeah. So the Rebbe says, Lepella. This is completely out of. Where does the question of this come up? But this was a rational question. The way the Rebbe says it, I can't understand how you would ever think of a question like this. What's behind this answer? Behind this answer is this. Whatever happened with Gorbachev, the fact that Gorbachev was the one who started this perestroika and glasnost and all that, this is just a means to an end. Gorbachev was not the one who invented freedom. This Indian communism had lost its hold, and we have broken through. Beruchnius, this has been broken through. The fact that there was this form or that form, this is just a form of how to express the real situation. The real situation is that communism was destroyed, and now it's time. And now we have the ability to rebuild Yiddishkeit in Russia. The fact that Gorbachev is imprisoned, that's only a circumstance. That he was circumstantial. He was the means by which it happened. Not to say that this is the whole basis for what's happening over there. What's happening over there is that Hashem had decreed this is the end of it. And therefore, when you went there, you didn't go there on Gorbachev promises. You went there because you recognized that Hashem said this is the end of Mitzrayim, this is the end of the Golus. If this is the end of the Golus, so how is it the fact that Gorbachev was in prison, how does that change anything? It's still the end of the Golus. In other words, the manner between how it happened. See, this is the same mentality. The mentality was that essentially it's communism. But something happened within communism that makes it change. But if that change, if something happened that changed, Gorbachev is in prison, then it falls back to where it was. And the Rebbe said, that's not the case. The case is that this is basically over. And a couple of days later, a week later, Yeltsin came in, and the whole thing was restored back, and then some, way beyond what Gorbachev himself had planned. So this is the principle of a change in the direction of Torah and mitzvahs. A change means not merely that from where I'm standing, this seems to be the logical thing to do. That does not constitute a change. And that does not prepare one for Kabbalah Satoir in the proper way. And this is what the plan that Hashem himself describes in Pasha Beshalach. It says like this: for me to lead them straight, smoothly to Eretz Yisrael will not accomplish anything, because they're still basically based in Egypt, based in Mitzrayim. But now I've led them, taken them out, so to speak, on eagle's wings and brought them over there. What needs to be, they have to be confronted. They have to confront all the difficulties. But it's necessary, since they'll have to confront the difficulties. And every time that they confront a difficulty, they resort more deeply into their mind, into their conviction, into their faith, and bring out more clearly their emunah. Therefore, they have to confront these difficulties. But since that there are difficulties, there is the danger that they will renege, that they will fall back. This is why I have to make sure that their path is such that to go back is not going to be so easy. But to smoothen their path and make it smooth and make it without any bumps, that's not doing a favor. Because essentially they will remain in Mitzrayim. This is an extremely pertinent expose for us.
Sorry, I don't know.
I know it's right. Revelation, teaching for us. Okay. Just as when we learn a piece of Gemara, and we learn a piece of Gemara, and I don't understand the Gemara, and I have a kasha on the Gemara. I have a kasha. I don't agree with the Gemara. I don't agree with the Rashi. So, this not agreeing with Rashi or with the Gemara, what is required? What does that challenge mean? There are two ways for a person to react to it. One way is to say, look, I'm just as rational as the people who wrote the Gemara. And if I don't agree with them, then in my view, they're wrong and I'm right. And I'm rejecting them. This way, that means I'm not a student. I'm not really accepting their teaching. I'm judging whether I agree with them or not. And I'm learning everything that I agree with, and everything that I don't agree with, then I'm rejecting. What is the correct approach in learning Torah? The correct approach in learning Torah is that if I don't understand something, if I don't agree with something, then that the chisorn, so to speak, the shortcoming is mine, not in the Gemara. And therefore I have to labor harder. I have to work harder. Work harder in every respect. Work harder in terms of trying to figure out what is being said, and work harder on myself so that my mind will be able to accept the thoughts that the Gemara says. My mind will be able to accept the thoughts that Rashi says, or that Chassidus says. Every time that one is confronted with this, and he stands up to the challenge, and he actually continues on his path and says, no, even the very statement, the very conviction that if I don't understand, it's my shortcoming rather than the Gemara, that itself already brings him closer to the Torah. That itself already tells him that he has to break away from where he is and he has to go elsewhere. And he cannot base his learning Torah on the basis of the seichel and the way he thought prior to learning Torah. He has to open up a new views, new way to look at things. This process is constant in a person's path of coming out of Mitzrayim and walking through the desert until he comes to Eretz Yisrael. And this process is constant throughout the time, in general, throughout the time that we are in Golus. And particularly those of us who have actually started from the Golus mentality, started from being outside of Torah. And our basic orientation was not based on Torah, based on worldliness, based on Mitzrayim. And then we recognize that we have to go into Eretz Yisrael, we have to go to Minkal the Torah. So we wish that the path should be very smooth. But we have to understand that if the path is smooth, then we will not have broken away from where we were. Then we understand the Torah with the same approach, with the same parameters, with the same logic that we understood the rest of the world. That does not bring us into Torah.
Wow.
Torah has a completely different parameters.
Must be difficult.
It has to be difficult.
If you want to get rid from your
Excuse me?
if you want to get rid from your past and from your klipa, it must be difficult. It's not going to be easy. Come on, Lord.
Please, you want it?
It has to be. And I'm explaining to you why. It's not, you may have a very good head and you understand everything. But the point over here is not just what you understand. The point is how you orient yourself. Do you still belong? Do you understand it from the perspective of where you're coming from? Or do you understand it with new parameters? There are, just one second. There are,
Please, the last
but you understand it on the basis of a logical process where you're coming from, or you understand it on the basis of the Torah principles. Okay. We just, a couple of months ago, we had Hanukkah, and we discussed it here, and I'm sure you learned more than what we discussed. That what was Hanukkah? What was the war of Hanukkah? What did Yevonim? What did they object? The Yevonim were also philosophers, and they didn't object to study of wisdom, of rational thought. What they objected in the Torah is that the inyan that by Yidden, the basis of Torah is that this is Hashem's word. Now what makes it true, not because it makes sense in the world, what makes it true is because Hashem said so. What makes it good, not because it fits into worldly order, but because Hashem said so. And this is what their objection. And this is what Eden fought. What does that tell you? That tells you that it is possible to learn Torah. And that's what they said. We don't object to you learning Torah. We just object to this one aspect of it. It's possible to learn Torah and rationalize things of Torah entirely on the basis of a worldly rational order. And that way, you may be learning Torah, but you're not really learning Torah. You're not at all associating to the principle of Torah. This is what Yidden fought with Mesiras Nefesh at the time of Hanukkah. You could say.
First they get inside to the water, after that they get the Torah. You need first to jump to the water, then you're going to get the Torah.
That's right.
It's like he said, first it must be difficult, then...
It has to be difficult, not because Hashem likes you to have difficulty, but because in essence, your personal essence is the opposite of it. So to change in essence is very difficult. Chassidus explains, I don't know if you came across this yet, that there is neshamas and malach, human beings and malach. Malachim, it says in Chassidus, are called oimdim. Oimdim means they stand still. Neshamas, how are you? Neshamas are called mahalchim. Mahalchim means that they walk. They walk. This is actually based on a posik in Tanakh. Mahalchim ben ho'imdim. What does it mean that malachim are called oimdim and neshamas are called mahalchim? Malachim are very great, to whatever degree we can understand malachim. But it says malachim are ruchnius and they cannot possibly do anything contrary to what Hashem directs them to do, and so forth. But they are oimdim. Oimdim means that they persist in the same madrega where they are. They cannot move away from the madrega. Now, the truth is that Chassidus explains it does not mean that they cannot grow. They can grow, but not move away completely from where from what their base is. The shomes are called mahalchim. What is a mahalach? Mahalach, like walking. The principle of walking is like this. You walk, a mahalach flies, right? Much faster than a shoma that can walk. But walking has one principle. When you pick up your foot and you put your right foot forward, you haven't made a step yet. When you make a step, when you pick up the left foot, also. In other words, you uproot yourself completely from where you started from. That's when you made a step. As long as you essentially rooted where you started from, and you were experimenting your way around, how's it feel over here, how's it feel over here, how's it feel over here, that's not a step. From my position here, do I understand this? Do I agree with this? How does it feel over here? That's not a step. Then you're essentially rooted where you are. And that can be, I understand, I don't understand, but that's not a step. You're acting like a malach, essentially. You're examining your whole surroundings, but you're not moving. A move means that you made a step, you moved one leg, and then eventually that leg, after you understand what it is, you pulls the other leg to it. And you completely dissociate to where you were standing before. That is not an easy thing at all. And if you think about it, to make the first step, one leg, is not so difficult. Let me feel my way, let me examine it, let me see what it looks like. That's not such a difficult thing, that's not such a big challenge. The big challenge is to bring the second leg with you and to completely break away from where you were before. That is the real challenge. That can never be easy. Because this is where you have to make a decision. Okay, I'm not here at all. I'm in a new place. Son?
I have a question. Isn't in what happened with the Jews when they left Egypt and everything, they at the end couldn't make it. The ones that left Egypt, they couldn't receive the test. They at the end they died in the desert.
That's right. Ultimately, Huh?
Egypt remained their base.
Yeah, they didn't transcend their base.
That's right. I mean, they accomplished what they accomplished, but this is the teaching for us. See, this is the thing. Whatever happened, this paves the path for us that we are capable of doing this. Ultimately.
How about being Mitzrayim? Is it a physical thing or is it a spiritual state of mind?
U.S. Mitzrayim is both a physical thing and primarily.
I think that
Right.
the problem is that not only there were a lot of physical hardships involved. I don't know. And I think a lot of them didn't want to leave because of creature comfort.
Okay, give me. I just want to finish this. Okay. Right after that, it says. Right after that Hashem said that I can lead them straight because they'll return back to Mitzrayim. What's the next thing it says in the pasuk? It says Hashem hoylech lifneim yom b'amodesh. Hashem was leading them with a pillar of fire of a pillar of fire and a pillar of clouds. They were actually embraced, so to speak, engulfed in a heavenly cloud all the time. And they had light by day and protected by night and so forth. So what this is telling us is at the time when we first start off, at the time when the Eden first left Mitzrayim, they were completely contained, covered up, and protected from every side. In an obvious way. They could see how Hashem is leading them. And they afterwards got the mon. Right? At the end of this passage it says that the Eden got the mon to eat. And this mon and these heavenly clouds accompanied them for 40 years throughout their journey in the desert. And then they had to cross the Yarden eventually and come to Eretz Yisrael. When they came to Eretz Yisrael, there was no more mon, there was no more Amud Ha'esh, there was no more Amud Ha'onon. Now they are in a new situation. This also repeats itself in every person's path. Just as a child in his early years is, under normal circumstances, is being led by his parents, and he is in the proper schools, in the proper chinuch, he's being taken care of. And then eventually he's led into a situation where he's saying, okay, now, my child, you're on your own. You have learned it, you're on your own. So the kid turns around and says, you were fooling me all the time. I thought I'd be taken care of. What do you mean on my own? So what's the message that we tell the child? The message that we tell the child is, listen, what I was demonstrating, what the parents were giving him, what I was demonstrating to you is not how the truth is. I, as a parent, can't really take care of you indefinitely. And the teachers that are teaching you cannot teach you indefinitely. You have to learn on your own. But what I was demonstrating to you is that Hashem is with you all the time. Ultimately, what you're supposed to learn from parental care is Hashem, that Hashem leads you throughout your life. Just like the Eden were carried through the desert, and when they were carried through the desert, taking care of all their needs. What was the point? The point is not just carry them to 40 years and then let them fly on their own. The point is to establish in their mind, in their heart, forever, that essentially the basis, Hashem is with them. But they have to now recognize this inyan that Hashem is with them with their own intelligence, not just because He is cradling them. You know what cradling, cuddling them. They have to understand with their own intelligence. They have to recognize the presence of Hashem, not through the means that by which He appears and shows Him, but by the means that they recognize intelligently that that's the truth. This is true in our situation also. When we first recognize Yiddishkeit, when we first come, we make the step, we come to yeshiva. So with all the difficulty that we have to overcome, to come to yeshiva and to confront, so to speak, our own background and to see how I understand what we learn and so forth, still we are in the circumstances where we have teachers, we can ask questions and we can confront, we can rebel, we can scream, we can have tinus, we can have arguments, but eventually we have to know that we'll have to stand on our own. Eventually we have to stand on our own, which means this is what we have to aim for. We have to take both feet over, where no matter what questions we have, and even if we can't answer all our questions, we have to know what the truth is. We can't always revert back and say, oh, I have a question, so I don't agree with this. That's not coming out of Mitzrayim. This is why during the early years we have all these difficulties, and we have to, like the Rabbi Hashem said, right out of Mitzrayim, right away, they're going to have to face challenges. While I'm with them, while I'm watching them, while I'm showing them the Anami HaKovod, they have to face challenges. So that eventually they can take things up on their own. The Rebbe says, just one second. The Rebbe says, every person is both a makabel, he receives teachings from others, and he is also a mashpia. He has to be both. He has to be a makabel. He has to have somebody to learn from, but he also is responsible to teach others. To receive to be a learner, to receive from others, it's relatively easy. Because if I have a kasha, I ask a kasha. I don't agree. Explain to me. And if you can't explain to me, then I don't agree. I don't accept this teaching. But to teach others, you have to have the full view and the full conviction of what you teach. We have to know that each one of us has to understand, we have to aim for the point where we can undertake life on our own. And not say, I thought that all Hasidim are tzaddikim. I find out that not all tzaddikim, all Hasidim are tzaddikim. And therefore I changed my mind. That doesn't work. We have to be convinced, we have to recognize the truth of Torah on our own. Not on the basis, I believe this person, I believe this person. We have to recognize it until such time that we can now go out and be what's called a teacher on our own. It's called, in Loshen HaGemara, it's called Toifeach HaMaslah HaTfiach. Toifeach HaMaslah HaTfiach means something is moist And then there is something that is moist so much that if it touches something else, that other thing also becomes moist. The Rebbe says, the Friedrich Rebbe is the one who started this whole thing of sending out shluchim. We are right in the Yotze time, sending out shluchim to bring Eden back to Yiddishkeit. And the rule that we've seen throughout this experience was that if there is one Yid, the Friedrich Rebbe said the following, that in any given community, in every given Jewish community, and there is one Yid who stands up with full conviction for Torah and Yiddishkeit, he eventually affects the whole community. Not the other way around. He can be one of 100. Eventually, it is recognized what he represents, and everybody, it's contagious. Everybody absorbs from him. So, all of us here, you have to understand, even though we've been such a short time in yeshiva and so forth, we are all Talmidim of the Rebbe. All of us are Talmidim of the Rebbe. And we have the koyach, we have to absorb this learning to the point where it becomes ours. And when we go out, everybody will, we become the toifeach, we become the moisture that moistens others, that brings others to Yiddishkeit, brings others to life. So that's why during the time that we're here, things are not going to be easy. But every time that we confront ourselves, every time that we have to go through a difficulty, and I say, Rashi, I don't understand what you were saying, and yet, what I know that you were right. That is a necessity to go through, and eventually, with God's Hashem's help, we do understand what Rashi says. We do understand what the Gemara says. Eventually, Hashem helps us to open our minds and hearts. But we have to go through these difficulties in order to break away from Mitzrayim, to get free completely and to get a new mind and a new heart. Simcha, you had a question?
Yeah, my question was, so, how come during this test of life, when a person eventually has to stand up, and then of course it's true that the person is supported by his parents, mashpim, whatever, but eventually he realizes that parents themselves and everybody depends on Hashem, and eventually he has to realize that there's a message the parents are carrying him, and the mashpim is that Hashem is with you, and you can realize that. But why does one person realize that at 18 in high school, and another person realizes at 28, and another person realizes at 60? Why is that? You know, why does Hashem let you one person wander off for so long as well as the other person, or how does it work? You know.
I can't answer that definitively. Why one person is one way and one person is another way. I can only say this, Simcha, that at the time when a person's intellect matures, he becomes aware, whether it's 18, 20, 21, at that age, generally speaking, he becomes aware that he has to take responsibility for his life. The question is only, not if he is aware, the question is whether he is willing to confront the difficulties that it entails, or he'd rather climb back into bed and sleep another hour. when one wakes up in the morning and it's very comfortable in his bed, even though he slept his whatever 7, 6, 8 hours, but it's comfortable. And why should I have to confront the day? So he turns over and says, it's too comfortable. That's the challenge. And that's, chas v'sholom, that one should not come to a point where it hits him hard and says, I'm ruining my life. So it's better to do it at a time when we're still in control. Okay? Hashem should grant everyone success in this mahalach, in this halicha. We have very short time, but we'll all be successful in making it. Step away from the Mitzrayim, step away from anything that's on the tumor of the world, and step into the Kedusha of Torah, and be able to live up to it. And build our own homes in Mitzvah Hashem, founded on Torah and Yiddishkeit.
Amen. Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Aslach.